From history to the here and now, the cost of war has taken a toll on our economy, but as we now seek to transition, Donald Trump has talked about what he hopes to accomplish economically as president. For more on Mr. Trump's economic plan, we're pleased to be joined from Newsmax New York by Trump advisor and CNBC contributor Larry Kudlow. Larry's also the author of the new book, JFK and the Reagan Revolution, A Secret History of American Prosperity. Larry, it's so good that you could spend some time with us here on Newsmax Prime, and we're going to get to your book in just a minute. But first, there was Donald Trump on The Tonight Show last night with Jimmy Fallon, telling Mr. Fallon that Mr. Trump's business background is a definite plus. Let's look and listen.
Yeah, I think business will always help. It helps from a country standpoint. You know, it's interesting, when I was doing the primaries, I spent less money than other people, and I did better than other people, and that's what we want to do for the country. We want to spend less money and do better.
He simplifies it, Larry, in such a Reagan-esque fashion, and at long last, for the presidency, it looks like voters are ready to have a businessman.
Well, I think you're right. You know, by the way, his business experience as a business cutter, cost cutter, budget cutter, you know, will serve him well. He has the right attitude going into the federal government, where, as you know, budgets are generally out of control, and so-called spending cuts either A, aren't real spending cuts, or B, are never legislated. So I think Trump, you know, is very good on this point, and Mrs. Clinton doesn't have any experience in that. She never cut anything, and she has no business background, so I think that's a good contrast. I think that's going to pay dividends for Trump.
It is a huge contrast. Another contrast philosophically, and you and I know the ways of Washington, and we both lament the budget rules there and the assumption that the big government types always tend to put out. So perhaps for that reason, earlier this week, Donald Trump projected out over a decade his plan for the economy. Let's listen to it in his own words and then get your reaction.
Over the next 10 years, our economic team estimates that under our plan, the economy will average 3.5% growth and create a total of 25 million new jobs. You can visit our website. Just look at the math. It works.
So he says the math works, and he's going to put 25 million people to work in new jobs. Can he get that done, Larry?
Absolutely. I mean, the only reason it's 10 years is because that's the budget convention in Washington. As you know, J.D., as a former House member, that's the Congressional Budget Office, deals in 10-year estimates. Probably that stuff's not worth the paper it's printed on. But what Trump is doing here is adopting a Reagan-esque approach, and by the way, for my book, a John F. Kennedy-esque approach. He's slashing tax rates on individuals, on businesses. He wants to roll back a myriad of regulations, and he wants to unleash energy and, of course, get rid of Obamacare and all of its taxes and spending and regulation. So I would just say to you, with these kinds of new incentives and limited government, you're going to get a lot of activity. The business tax cuts alone, I believe, you know, he's slashing tax rates on business. He's going to repatriate trillions of dollars to put to work in the states. So, you know, 25 million is a decent number. That's 2.5 million jobs a year. I think that's a great thing to shoot for. You know, in his speech yesterday, he also mentioned a 4% economic growth target. I love that. I mean, Reagan had 4 to 5%, and actually, you know, the 80s and the 90s, you had 4 to 5% growth. Bill Clinton didn't do much damage to that. In the 60s, under Kennedy, you had nearly 5% growth. So I think Trump's on target here.
Yeah, and a nod to the Republican Congress, of which I was a part in the 90s, to kind of keep Clinton on track. Speaking of Clintons and speaking of contrast, Larry, you mentioned contrasting with Mrs. Clinton. Trump did that again before the Economic Club of New York. Here's the way he put it in that speech.
In Hillary Clinton's America, we have surrendered our status as the world's great economy, and we have surrendered our middle class to the whims of foreign countries. We take care of them better than we take care of ourselves.
So an America First policy when it comes to our economy. Certainly that's contrasting with Mrs. Clinton.
Look, Mrs. Clinton wants high taxes across the board, okay? So-called rich people, rich corporations, capital gains, stock market transactions, energy, and so forth. She is the taxer, okay? Trump is the tax cutter. In my opinion, Trump has a recovery prosperity plan. Mrs. Clinton has a recession stagnation plan. I think it's just that simple. She wants to roll over all these new spending programs or add on to spending that happened under Obama. Didn't do a thing to stimulate the economy. It's the worst recovery since World War II. Trump has a completely different approach. It is a major contrast. If I were he, I would say this every single day, no matter where I was. I would talk about the contrast. I would talk about the different policies of taxing and spending and regulating. And I would talk about the fact that he will gain us back growth, prosperity, wages, and jobs. She can't possibly with her program.
A minute 30 remains now. We're going to talk about your book specifically, Larry. I love the title, JFK and the Reagan Revolution, A Secret History of American Prosperity. Larry, what's so secret about it?
Well, I knew you loved conspiracies, JD. That's why I really did that title.
Okay.
But let me just say this. Everybody knows that Ronald Reagan was a tax cutter and a supply sider. And by the way, it worked. But what most folks don't know is that John F. Kennedy was the first supply sider, the first tax cutter, at least after the since the 1920s. Kennedy did it. He slashed tax rates from 91% to 70%, which seems really high today, but in those days that was normal, and it was stifling the economy. So his Republican Treasury Secretary, Douglas Dillon, came up with a plan to lower marginal tax rates, high-end, middle-end, low-end corporations, you name it. Dillon said this will create new incentives and new rewards for work and investment and business startups and so forth. Dillon was right. Kennedy bought into it. At the New York Economics Club, where Trump was yesterday in December 1962, Kennedy made a fabulous speech outlining this new economic approach.
And I think I have it right here. A rising tide lifts all the boats. I remember that line.
A rising tide.
That's right.
You and I and lots of others. We used to hear it from our friend Jack Kemp, who was my political mentor.
Absolutely, and we hear it again
right.
from Jack Kennedy in your book, JFK and the Reagan Revolution. Larry Kudlow, thanks for your time.